interested at all looking into the certification. Because for us nowadays it is more important what we interact with the people and what we can see. Whether we can see the people talking comfortably on technical topics. Only like if you are exploring some career like with your background 12 and 14 years, if you wanted to make some career in medical affairs and some kind of certification program, not like this today, like Singapore University Excellence is conducting nowadays some 5 days of program, which is like diploma and this kind of like certificate program into pharmaceutical and medical devices. And the same way if you explore, that is called core MUSQ. You will find out some program, 5 days program for clinical affairs, 5 days program of 3 months, even 6 months of program is there, which is totally online at different place, but it is having a lot of value because then you have now worked into the corporate medical affairs and the clinical domain for program will give you certificate and definitely it will give us some access network and approaching and you looking into this corporate clinical and regulatory from a different perspective. That's how I can guide you.
Okay. Sir, I have another one more question. Can you suggest some more courses here in India?
Okay, so let's go through with this my presentation because when someone from your university started for this topic, I was very questioning and I was curious to understand the background and the purpose. And that's the reason when I understand the background of this is first time like 3 days of program, 8 days of program. My proposal was that let me first speak on with the people on what is that. Right? What kinds of competencies are expected. So let's go through with this and only I will let me finish this piece. Definitely you can stop me somewhere in the beginning, but you can write down your question in the chat. And this is 1.5 hour session. Definitely, and I can try my best to keep at least 15 minutes for those ways in the
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
yeah.
Thank you.
So how you propose? Do you are you proposing some more questions from here, or we can go through with this presentation first, and then we can take the question.
Uh, I think we can start off with the section. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Somebody trying to talk.
Okay, great. So just my one request that if everyone can hear my this will be the entire session uninterrupted. And definitely on some slides somewhere in case you are coming across with some question, I encourage that just please drop it in the chat box. Then towards the end we can take out can help us that. Okay, so good evening everyone. I understand that all the participants here are from India, so that's your only good evening. This is Sharad Shukla, and today I'm going to speak on this medical device regulatory affairs as profession because I understand all the participants here are from the SRM biomedical. So definitely it's more like how to understand the medical device regulatory affairs function. And this is totally an individual perspective. And that's where one disclaimer, right? Is that any opinion expressed in this presentation or in the following slides are solely of mine, and it is not necessarily should be linked with the Johnson and Johnson or my. So before begin with, just let me self-introduce myself, right? So I'm Sharad Shukla. I'm masters in microbiology back in 2000. That's where I'm having around right now I'm working with Johnson and Johnson Singapore entity. Prior relocating to Singapore, I served with Johnson and Johnson India for 5.5 years as the leader right now I am leading the entire Southeast Asia, which includes around 10 markets. They are the biggest markets there. And I'm having a very big team around 36 people who are spread across the 10 countries within the Asia. Along with working with Johnson Johnson, I'm very happy with the regulatory policy at even right now, I am having the chair position with APECMed, which is the Business MedTech Forum involved in the So I am chairing the capacity building for the industry regulatory affairs as well as for industry regulators, right, across the Asia Pacific and global, which is more focusing towards the regulatory reliance and regulatory convergence, which is the industry right. Prior working with NTA, I worked with GE Healthcare as a senior regulatory affairs. Before that, I worked with the as the medical device manager and the active implantable single-use disposable and disposable devices. And definitely the combination of products were everywhere. So I have also been with the Europe and India. And prior to that notified body for around 50% of my career, around 19 years, I have worked with different startups. And I think working with two different startups has been my foundation stone, where I have worked in different domains, whether it is design, development, or manufacturing, or that's how it helped me in evolving me as an overall regulatory. As you can see, there are in the bottom there are some categories what the strength has been identified, different psychometric assessment and personality assessment. I'm more descriptive, activator, very strong communication skills, and very high level of learning attitude. And definitely, I am having some that I'm bringing to the people. And on the fascination advantage as well, you will see very authentic in the private and forward thinking. And in the team environment, I'm more like the creator. I'm more like innovative, whether it's innovation or of development. And share these
playing a key role for my current profession. So let's understand first, right? And I remember around 3 and 4 years back, first time in India. I think Johnson and Johnson was the first company back in 2016 that we thought to explore biomedical engineers into regulatory affairs function. And that's where like we interviewed some of the freshers from different biomedical institutes across India and looked into the talent pipeline. Right now I'm very happy. I think in India, Johnson and Johnson team, around 50% of my workforce there is the biomedical engineer, and we were the first in the industry. But one of the thing I have identified over the years, right, when I interact with freshers, whether they are in the life science work stream or from medical field or from pharma or the biomedical, when we interact first time as freshers with them, right, and we ask about what you understand about regulatory affairs. So people most of the time are not having any clue. And going back in 2002, when the regulatory affairs terminology was very, very new and it was evolving, it was more known as a quality assurance. And normally the quality assurance people were responsible for ensuring the regulatory compliance, taking the product registration, CE marking 13485, and the life cycle management from overall compliance perspective. But right now, I think we are in far better shape, right? Even globally, there are some kind of curriculums and program which are entirely focusing on regulatory affairs. We are having the regulatory affairs organizations like the RAPS or TOBRA, and not many things are happening at different level, right? Because everyone understands that how critical the regulatory affairs functions are in different domain, especially into medical devices. So that's where these are some of the details or the definition kind of thing which I picked from the RAPS. So it is the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society. This is the very old and only regulatory affairs professional society where there are different members from the pharmaceutical, medical device, or different domains. Even from 2012 onwards, I'm engaged with the refs and I'm sitting in their technical board as a technical subject matter expert, engaged in authoring and writing the books and the chapters for regulatory study and the profession. So that's where they define that regulatory is very critical function in making safe and effective healthcare product, and professionals who ensures the regulatory compliance and prepare submission. The same way Topra also identified focusing on the public health by controlling the safety and efficacy, and Wikipedia also defined regulatory affairs as a profession within regulated industry. In different functions, and that's where you can see the regulatory affairs discipline oversees how product is regulated in different industries, whether it is pharmaceutical, devices, biologicals, food and food sciences, whether how they are developed, tested, manufactured, marketed or distributed to certify their safety and efficacy for human use. Regulatory affairs function work to ensure that both products and manufacturing are compliant in meeting the applicable domestic or the global legislative requirement. And before moving further and talking about the competencies and something, I think this is very interesting, some of those slides, and I did some research today to dig out some latest data to share with all of you, because all of you are definitely connected with biomedical and medtech space. So this is very interesting data, right? The medical technology landscape is always evolving, with the industry facing new business and regulatory challenges every few years. And the medtech industry has recently taken the center stage because of this unprecedented situation, right, of COVID, where the new innovative product and people with technical background and interest in this intercultural and interpersonal profession. To keep up with such dynamic business and regulatory needs, medtech regulatory professionals must continuously modernize and upskill their capabilities. And this will be more clear from the next couple of slides, which are outcome of industry survey conducted by Emergo. So these all are the next 3 and 4 slides. I have extracted these figures from the Emergo annual report, which was published basis some research conducted in March 2020. So this is the latest data. And as you can see from this slide, this survey structure was basis the more than 1,800 people across the globe took this survey, and around 71% of respondents are from regulatory affairs function. So definitely this data is very important for me when I speak with anyone or when I interact with my team, because this is giving me some insight of the industry. And as you can see from this one of the survey question, what do you think about the growth potential for medical device sales turnover in these regions during the next 5 years? So definitely by this time the COVID-19 situation was emerging out. Definitely here you can see the maximum percentage and the high growth potential is identified in Asia Pacific region, followed with US and Middle East. The next question is, which markets do you expect to produce the strongest growth in sales and turnover for your company in 2020? So last slide was from an industry perspective, but this slide is from your industry. So like if I am one of the respondents, that I look from a J&J perspective, and even here you can see the maximum growth is there in the United States, followed with Europe and then with China. And if I combine this Asia Pacific number, then you can see the highest growth is expected in Asia Pacific. Now, the most interesting slide, right? So the respondent of this survey were the CEO and the market access and the legal, the quality and the regulatory affairs guys. And when you are looking into one of the question that what are the biggest challenges which industry or the people face? And here you can see the changing regulatory environment. And that's where it clearly denotes the importance and the growing critical nature of regulatory affairs profession. In fact, I was reading somewhere where US FDA has predicted that by 2026, there will be an 8% growth into the regulatory affairs professional numbers. So like those 8% job growth, or you can see the vacancies or the demand, it is there in the US market, which US FDA has predicted. And probably these numbers may be more when you look into other countries and other regions. And this is one of the question which is asking the people to current process of obtaining regulatory approval for medical device in these market is easier or more difficult than it was a few years ago. And there will be a further, I will be speaking more on this complexity and why we talk about the different reasons with different regulatory involvement, and where as a regulatory professional our life are little bit tough and challenging. But here you can see in Europe, people are expecting like the environment will be more difficult, and definitely that can be understood because in Europe we are transitioning in terms of the regulation. So from existing medical device directive, now the transition is towards the EU MDR, which is medical device regulation, followed with then US, because US is also some of those changes are happening, and then China. Definitely, China is always a tough market as a regulatory affairs profession, and then Brazil, definitely, and Visa is coming out with some new complexities, and definitely Japan is a key market. So here you can see these are the top key market for any multinational company or any growing company. Anyone wanted to take their product to the United States or to the Europe, and definitely China is a kind of entry hub or the strongest market in Asia Pacific. So all these 6 markets are showing some level of difficulties. Now, definitely I have put you on mute, so I cannot ask this question. But normally I ask this question that what do you think by looking into this picture while we are discussing on the regulatory affairs as a profession, right? And this picture somewhere very interlinked or signifies me as a regulatory affairs professional, because we as a regulatory affairs professional are the one unique function. In fact, I would say that no other function is having this kind of privilege to interact and speak with each and every function within the company, right, throughout the product life cycle. Definitely depending on which phase or which kind of regulatory affairs work you are working, probably your interactions may be limited with some function. But if someone is working as a global regulatory affairs, or someone is working into the pre-market stage where you are responsible for the product development as a regulatory affairs and then commercializing the product. So definitely in my career, while working as a global regulatory affairs, I involved with the product concept stage, when even with the marketing we are discussing about that where marketing wants to take this product, what are the user requirement, and how we should plan the usability studies, the safety testing and everything. And regulatory affairs is the first function when the idea is emerging out that we wanted to develop this kind of product for this market basis, this user need. The regulatory affairs is always a first function on the table, along with marketing and the engineering team and the market access when the strategies are defined. Because this is the interest market, we guide to the team that fine, marketing wants or they are seeing a market access plan for these key market, and for these key market, this kind of product development, this kind of safety requirement, or the timeline and the expenses may be looking like. And accordingly, the market strategies or the launch strategies are drafted out and the finalized, right? Then throughout that product life cycle, the regulatory affairs interacts with the clinical, medical affairs, the quality assurance, the commercial guys, the sales, marketing, you name the function, and regulatory is interacting with all those functions throughout that. And when your product is towards the end of life and you are either diversifying or you are discontinuing from the market, then your interactions are at different level. So this picture shows me that regulatory has to work in sync with each and every function, right? And that's where for the success of any product launch or for any successful company where all those functions including regulatory, understand that something is important. And that's where the influencing without authority. So when we will speak on the competency metrics, okay, so guys, just hold on. I just got message, my internet connection is unstable. So I'm going to stop my video to improve the internet buffering. Okay, so that message has gone, so I can continue. So as regulatory affairs function, right, the high level of competency requirement is that where you have to influence several stakeholders without having any direct authority. Like those people and those functions are not reporting to you, but you have to get involved with them into negotiation. You have to speak with the leadership team to influence them and to turn their decision based on some regulatory compliance risk. Because if you are going to someone by stating that this is a kind of challenge and this strategy has to be changed, this launch timeline has to be changed, no one likes you, right? So without creating any tension in the entire system, or without creating those level of frictions within the entire team, how you navigate and how you put those negotiation, I think this is the most important and critical skills. So the regulatory affairs professional sits at the interesting nexus, right? I call nexus between the public policy, law, health, economic, and science. And this unique intersection allows regulatory specialists to work in a variety of organizations, including pharmaceutical or medical device product manufacturers, regulatory agencies, public advocacy groups, philanthropic organizations, and many corporate offices. Recently, one of my Singapore member, he was working in pharmaceutical, and I took him into my medical device as a cross-sector movement or talent development. After working here, now he joined the NUS University, where he is establishing some regulatory affairs curriculum for the pharma and medical. So you can see that by qualification, the gentleman was from sports medicine, and he came from academia to regulatory affairs function in pharmaceutical. After working 2 and 3 years, he worked and transitioned in the later movement to the medical devices, worked for 1 and 2 years, and then he was preferred for some kind of role in the university, which was talking both with the pharma and medical device. So that's where, when we are at that juncture, I think I was not that fortunate and lucky enough during my college time that we get this kind of career counseling and guidance on very clear that what are my strengths, what are different prospects, how I should think. And over the years we have navigated our own career, but now I think the situation is far better, right? We are having the internet, we are having so many portals, we are having mentors, coaches, even academic institutes are having the different placement cells where even the faculties are so competent, they can guide you, they can mentor you. So you have to understand that when you are creating your career plan or your career development, you have to plan out. I'm sorry, what happening? Someone has scratched out on the screen. What happened? This can someone help me? Can is someone else also seeing some kind of red sketch on the entire screen?
Yes, sir, yes. Sir, just 1 second, sir. Bhagavi ma'am. Bhagavi ma'am.
Yeah, I guess somebody else is. I guess someone else is also trying to access.
role in the development of life cycle technologies and made available to market around the world. So here you can see the top three pillars, right? So at the broad level, we define or distinguish the regulatory affairs professional in different phases. So either someone is into the pre-market or the post-market, right? So that's where, and some people work as the transfer or those kind of medium scale where the product is transferring from the research and development to manufacturing, right? Because in the manufacturing facilities as well, there are the regulatory affairs function who plays the important role in establishing those manufacturing pipeline and ensuring that manufacturing plants are compliant with those local and manufacturing statutory and the regulatory requirement. So someone in the beginning has asked some question. I think it was Suresh. The name was Suresh. So you can see even in the product development phase, there are the clinical trial applications, and even at the post-market phase as well, you can see that there are further clinical trial applications. So even when product is not commercialized, even there are the pre-market clinical trial who are part of the R&D, and even they are extended arm of the regulatory affairs function. And sometimes at the regional level or at the country level, there are different medical affairs team and the clinical trial teams who who are taking care of the clinical trials or the market studies or the phase 4 studies to support the product claim or to fulfill the regulatory requirement. Like in India, if some product is getting registered, it is very innovative product. The company have to give commitment that they will conduct some kind of phase 4 study or the post-market study where they will create some data and provide. So that's where at the India level, there may be some people who are taking care of those requirements. And they might not be the regulatory affairs. Sometime in some companies, they might be the clinical trial. The people are the regulatory affairs professional. In some companies, it is the separate team under the medical affairs. So I'm taking pause before shifting to next slide. Again, someone is playing around with some sketch and marker. I'm again seeing some screen. So I'm disconnecting to join back again.
Saraj sir,
Yes.
this is Rubita sir. In your platform, there is an option where you can stop scribbling, sir. There is an option, so you can just.
What is stop?
There is an option you can see in the settings, sir, where you can stop this scribbling and all.
So that's where I'm saying. I think so. Okay. I have hide annotation for others.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'm disconnecting to join back again.
Okay, sir.
நீ எதுவும் தொடாத ப்ளீஸ், கொஞ்ச நேரம் போ. நான் நீ எதுவும் பண்ணாத போ சொன்னேன்.
along with ASWP and Accenture on the competencies development for the industry. And in the next year, beginning January, February, we will start working on the regulatory affairs curriculum for the regulators. So as you can see here, right, when you wanted to grow as a regulatory affairs professional at the entry level, probably you might not need all those skills and you do not have to exhibit those. But once you enter to that regulatory affairs profession and you want to grow, definitely you have to focus on those competencies and that how you can acquire, strengthen and develop those, whether it is the leadership skills or the executive presence or the soft skills, right? And that's where even you will Google. So if you just Google and put the ASWP regulatory training curriculum for industry, it will take you to the ASWP site where from last 1 month the draft paper has been put for the public comment. So I encourage you that please have a look on that. This will also help you to understand that what is going on. And in fact, this curriculum we are developing at the Asia Pacific level and for the global to keep some kind of basic criteria for the development of the professionals and for their recruitment. Because sometimes when the multinational companies are hiring the people, we are hiring the fresh people and then we are developing and nurturing and investing, and then some companies are taking them, but that flow, right, the inflow and the outflow is not balanced. So this is more towards driving that regulatory harmonization and convergence, and this is just a simply efforts to create some comprehensive training curriculum for the industry regulatory affairs professional. The competency framework was prepared by ASWP and APECMAT in 2017, and continuous evolution in law, regulatory environment, and global economics are regulatory reshaping and expanding the scope of work for regulatory professionals. And to be effective and advance in this field, you must have to be committed. You must have to be committed to continuously focus on your professional development over the course of your career, right? And that's where understanding that what are those critical. So we are defining and majorly even the RAFs and TUPRA are also defining the skills as the foundational and the functional domain. So foundational is more towards those leadership piece where you can see the business partnering. Business partnering is very, very critical because like I briefed you that you are interacting and trying to influence different function at different level. So in fact, let me take the same way like people management. So if in regulatory there are two career pathway, one is the technical and one is the people leadership. Someone can be excellent in the technical leadership but maybe a failure into the people management, or the vice versa. Sometimes there are people who are exceptional technical and they are very good with the people management as well, because you understand now we are moving towards the millennial generation or the Z generation, and if you are a manager born in 75 or 70s or 65, I think your leadership style is different, which might be creating so many conflicts with the millennial. So to understand those people expectations and developing them as per the current environment, those are the keys. The same way like business strategies, communications, project management, and finance. Finance is also important, right? Couple of years back, some of the people who are having the working knowledge, I am seeing Aishwarya also in this session. These people can understand that we were called supporting function or enabling function. And I'm having the high objection personally. I never called myself a supporting function or enabling function. I called myself or my function or my department very proudly that we are the strategic partner who are sitting on the table to shape the company direction, right? And that's where now you have to understand finance. You don't have to be the finance expert, but you should know how to read the balance sheet, how you can project and communicate your product successes. If I have secured some new product approval, just communicate it to leadership that I have secured the new product approval is not effective. But if I convert that product approval into the US dollar. And if I say that I converted a piece of paper and your research into such a kind of documentation that I have secured approval and it is going to drive a market growth, giving you XYZ US $1 million growth into this year, right? So which one is the most effective communication? The second one, definitely. In the functional domain, definitely your regulatory knowledge about the different country regulations, about the technical products and everything. But that is fine. That you can learn over the period of time, right? We are never expecting people to be expert in each and everything. Definitely when you are working on some product, you can understand the basics of regulatory will always remains the same. And it is more about the mindset and the attitude of the people, which most of the hiring managers are looking into this domain. And your pre-market and the post-market technical skills, how to create the regulatory strategies, and definitely your focus on quality and the compliance. And that's where this slide, I'm not going to deep dive into the detail. This is more further the subdomain under each of those pillars. So like under the business partnering, further subdomains, strong business acumen and the commercial awareness, your knowledge on the products, processes, and the business units, and knowledge and understanding of regulatory interacts with other functions to achieve those business objectives, and your flexibility, resilience, and innovativeness, right? So these are further subdomains under the project management, your interpersonal skills, and understanding on the statistics, data analysis. Definitely if you are more into that data analytics and towards the regulatory digital, then those pieces may be important. The same way in the functional domain, you can see under the pre-market, we have defined so many things. The same way the post-marketing may be different, and then regulatory strategies. So how you can develop yourself into this domain? Probably sometimes it is not all about getting yourself certified towards this. You might not get some ready training available, or there might not be some certification training available around these subdomains and the functional domain. Sometimes it may be more like reading and developing your understanding towards that. Like if finance, you can go through with the basics of finance. You just Google and understand how the balance sheet can be read. And it is more like your executive presence and mindset, that how you communicate something, how you create some communication, keeping the finance aspect into the center to draw the attention from your different stakeholder. So for that, you do not need some kind of certification. And during interaction with some people at the networking event or at some conferences, definitely there are opportunities where you can influence and exhibit those knowledge around those areas. This is like very top level good regulatory practices to understand where laws, guidance, and regulatory controls are on top. And it is everything with a core purpose to ensure that the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental right of every human being. So everything around the statutory and regulatory requirement as a regulatory affairs function, we are keenly and deeply have to look into that the safety and performance is not compromised. And that's where we understand the standards and all those design and development requirement, the market requirement, to ensure that products are the patient and the HCPs are getting the safe product. And at the same time, ensuring that our companies and our employees are not breaking some laws, they are not violating some of the regulatory and statutory requirements. So we are not putting our company and our stake on the risk. So we work very closely with the regulatory compliance or the legal team as well to ensure that all the regulatory and statutory requirements are fulfilled and our stakeholder understand what it is. Globally, the regulations, so the regulatory affairs is very complex. If you are working as a global regulatory, or if you are working into the country, even I say that if you are working into the India regulatory affairs, still it is very important to understand that how regulations are drafted and what all are the regulatory requirements in other markets, right? Because if you understand the global regulation pathways, if you understand the global how the global regulatory regulations are evolved and drafted. In fact, at the advanced leadership level, after 5, 6, 7 years of your career into the basic work, when you move to the next level, that next level is shaping the advocacies and policies, right? And if you do not understand the global requirement, you cannot participate and put your thought on the table when you are getting involved with different regulatory authorities or industry forum, and you cannot shape that environment. So here you can see these are all the major market, and each of these markets are having the different authorities and different requirement. That's where it is making some little bit more complex. Everything starts with the US, right? So if you go to the US FDA website, you will understand that regulatory involvement in any countries, and even historically, the regulations are evolved because as a result of some tragedies, right? So when some tragedies happen and some issues happen, then there is always a need which is identified and find out that definitely we have to do something towards the quality or towards the regulation. And it is started with US FDA in 1976, where the entire 510K regime is defined pre-amendment and post-amendment kind of thing. In Europe also, that evolvement starts somewhere in 1970s. So Europe and the US is the very old regulation and the most advanced regulation as on date. Australia, even though they started in 1990, but Australia, or we call it ANZ, that is also the very key market because of its reimbursement in the Asia Pacific, and it is the key market for different companies. So ANZ is also something which is evolving. Canada started late, but they are having now very thorough and very stringent regulatory requirement. Japan is the very, very key market, and which is totally different. So even as a companies, where if you are working into product development, you create a separate strategy for US, Europe, and China, and very exclusive strategy for Japan, because Japan is not recognizing your US approval or Europe approval. For Japan, even you have to start from scratch. So when companies are going to submit their submissions into the US FDA or to the Europe, in parallel, we work towards the Japan submissions as well. So Japan market is very unique. And that's where later it was identified the IMDRF came, which is the voluntary group of medical device regulators from the 5 GSTF markets like your US, Europe, Japan, Canada, Australia. They formed this group. Later on, some other countries also get involved. And the purpose of this IMDRF or the ASWP and all these industry, the harmonization working parties is to drive the harmonization. Because that is the biggest challenge as regulatory affairs. Different country and different regions are having different regulatory involvement. One product may not meet all the requirements. So it is the regulatory burden on the companies to create a different models of the product and create a different IFUs and different labeling to meet all those individual country requirements. And then ASEAN has come out, ASEAN, all the 10 countries, they have come out with a different directive, which is called ASEAN Medical Device Directive, which is totally different, which is different from Europe, which is different from US, Japan, and China, and they are having their own requirement. So that's where the complexity in the medical devices, where there are thousands of different type of medical devices, and we have to understand, if you wanted to understand the regulatory affairs, you have to understand that medical devices are first regulated. That system of categorization or classification was introduced to ensure that appropriate control mechanisms are applied basis their risk and protection of public health. And in medical device globally, starting from US to some very small country like Jakarta or to Hong Kong, everywhere it is a risk-based approach for medical devices. And that's where we are different from food or pharmaceutical. So probably the classification of medical devices may be different. Like in India, it may be totally different in comparison to US. In US, all the medical devices are only class 1, 2, and 3. But if you go to the Europe, they are having the 6 classes. So even in class 2, they have further differentiated as class 2A and 2B. If you come to the ASEAN, in ASEAN, we do not call it class 1, 2, and 3. We call it class A, B, C, and D, right? If you go to A and Z, they are having the different classification. But everywhere the principle is risk-based approach, right? And these are some of those examples, because when as per your risk increase, right, your regulatory requirements are also increasing. So that which you can understand from this slide, which I have taken from some IMDRF and some source. So as you can see towards the right hand side, the D is the highest risk devices and A is the least risk devices. So when your product risk is increasing, your document requirement and your clinical requirements are also increasing. For class D, which is the highest risk devices, or class 3, you have to apply the stringent control, and you have to exhibit those control to your regulatory authority to secure those approval. That's where, just for your reference, I have put some very top level. I understand that I may be having some next session after 2 days, right? Day after tomorrow. There I may more talk on the regulatory regulation and the global regulation. But in this session, let's keep this at very top level, the different regulatory classification at different country. And this slide is old, but it is still true as on date. So this is not the true data, and this is not precise. So this is disclaimer, right? And this may be overlapping. This is not the accurate. But here you can see the regulatory complexity across the world, where some of the countries are having the strictest regulation, some where there are more like the borderline cases where the clarities are not there, and some countries are there where even there is no regulation as on date. So this is not the true number 85, probably those number may be up and down, but this is more like the overlapping or illustrative examples only. So there are countries with comprehensive regulatory system specific to medical devices, like GSTF countries, which I mentioned 5 countries, US, Europe, Japan, Canada, and ANZ, Australia. So there are varying degree of harmonization. Countries which are having the comprehensive advanced regulatory system, like the Singapore and Taipei, so they are having the harmonized system. Some countries like Brazil, Korea, Thailand, where there is no harmonization and you have to meet several additional requirements. There are countries with less advanced and less comprehensive unharmonized regulatory system, like China. Economies with harmonized but not comprehensive, Hong Kong. And there are countries like India, which is non-comprehensive. Definitely now in India, even the medical device regulations are evolving. Starting from April next year, all the medical devices will be regulated. But I will say that still the journey is long. Still it might take some years to have some kind of comprehensive and full system in India. Okay, so I'm towards the last because I just wanted to keep some minutes for our interaction and for questions. Anything from your end? So just this is a summary kind of thing. We understand that as regulatory affairs that there are very fast technological development, and when the technological advancements are happening thanks to the biomedical and the advanced science right now, artificial intelligence and evolving cyber security, we are having new technologies and new advancement every day. Couple of years back, there was more regulation around the software alone medical devices. But if as on date you talk about in last couple of years, J&J has been on the leading front globally. US FDA has come out with a separate guidance document on the SIMDs and the SAMDs. Now on top of that, the cybersecurity risks are there. So now the new regulations are drafted around cybersecurity. And this is creating a pressure to toughen the regulatory system. And then there are patient consumer who are very much informed thanks to the internet and the media and Netflix and so many things where there are different documentaries. The patients and the people are aware nowadays more, and they challenge you. Increasing focus on healthcare technical assessment, rate of innovation, diversity and complexity of technologies, and differentiation between local, international, emerging and developed market. And that's where this everything is adding complexity and challenges to the regulatory affairs function. But that's where I find it very interesting, because every day when I am waking up as a regulatory professional, I know that I may be facing some new challenge and I have to brainstorm something new when I am on table with my team, and there is no saturation at all, because every day we are seeing something new. Compliance, cut across, there are so many industries and global regulations are constantly evolving. Critical role, so there are key takeaways. Regulatory affairs is very critical function, and we are a strategic function. So be cautious when you define your regulatory career and those development options. Pursuing a career in regulatory field provides the opportunities to influence regulation and policies to improve the life of millions. That is like kind of satisfaction, because I proudly say that because of my function, because of my work, I am supporting the patient community, I am supporting to the healthcare professional, and I'm contributing to improve the life of millions by supporting the new product introduction in different market. And definitely the key is that professional success in our regulatory affairs require specialized regulatory knowledge and hands-on experience when you are evolving. So if you are having passion, you are curious, you are having a good learning pace, and you are not bothered with constantly learning something new every day, then probably this may be a very interesting and high rewarding career. Definitely, when from a compensation perspective, from a career growth perspective, regulatory affairs is seeing a lot of positive signs, and medtech industry is evolving. So the regulatory affairs. So with this, I am taking pause and open for any questions and any clarification need. I hope that everyone must have enjoyed, and I helped you with some new insight and some new direction, right, for a regulatory affairs. And it must have created some curiosity to further deep dive and to explore and to understand the regulatory affairs as a function and as a profession. Hello. Hey, hi. I'm audible, sir. Yes, it is Jenny. Yeah, good. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. I am Jenny from SRM Institute of Science and Technology. Yeah. Sir, like I wanted to know, like, what are the great, good platforms, and from where we can do like online courses or learn more about regulatory affairs, sir. See, in India, definitely like, okay. So since you are biomedical graduates and biomedical masters, right? Definitely it gives you edge over others. In medical devices in India, if I talk about couple of years back, this function was dominated by the pharmaceutical guys. Even pharmaceutical professionals, even today, they are exploring to move to the medical devices, and there are so many candidatures, and normally they are preferred because they are having some hands-on and they do not mind making some lateral move. But you as a biomedical profession, if during your study and by the time you are finishing your program and graduating, right, if you are having some fundamental knowledge and you are very clear what is regulatory affairs, and it may be some self-read thing, right, you do not need some certification as a profession, as a fresher. Only you might take some starting role in some companies, and you might give very tough competition to other freshers like pharma freshers or life science freshers. You can give a fair competition as a biomedical, because if I am a hiring manager and someone is coming for me to me as a fresher, and if I have to pick between the pharma and biomedical, definitely my vote go towards the biomedical, because if I am hiring biomedical, definitely I do not have to teach and train you on the product side. Where I have to focus the training aspect is more towards the foundational and those functional things. But I'm not bothered much about the human anatomy, physiological things, and the product technology, because you as a biomedical may have already gone through with all those things. But still, like, if during your graduation, if you are really sincere to make the career, there is no harm in exploring the RAPS online certification. So there are like RAC credential where definitely it costs you, But in India, as an emerging market, there are some benefit around 20-30% discount. Not many people are knowing. You can join some study group, and this may cost around 700 or 800 US dollar. But if you can make some group among your friends group and create, like, purchase some study material among you and create some study group, probably it may cost you less. And once you clear the RAC, and as a fresher, if you are RAC, I think this is going to give you edge over others.
Okay, sir. So, like, doing a master's in regulatory affairs, would that give us an edge over other people, sir?
Definitely. But in India right now, there is no masters in regulatory, or there is no even graduation in regulatory affairs. For that, you have to move abroad, right? And definitely, if you wanted to move outside India for higher studies, definitely doing some masters in regulatory affairs is going to give you some expedited career or expedited entry, accelerated entry into regulatory affairs function, because whatever few colleges in US and UK and Europe there are multinational companies who are having a campus recruitment, and definitely then it is like more like a global career, and you are giving some years there and then moving here and there.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'm a visiting faculty. I'm a faculty with National University of Singapore. I'm into the technical panel of REFs, and when I'm interacting with the students, I'm teaching. I think definitely I'm seeing a lot of praise and a lot of interest towards regulatory people. People are investing, and definitely after doing this kind of program, you are you are having the competitive advantage, right? If someone fresher is applying for some role and you are someone who is having some kind of certification or some kind of this program and formal education in regulatory affairs, definitely it is going to make something tough for you if you are not having something. I hope it is answering your question.